Welcome to the Inclusive Design Project with Fanny Cravoy, where we learn from the experts who are revolutionizing workplaces, businesses, and communities by using an inclusive design approach.
So, Francis, you were IBM's first Chief Accessibility Officer, and you have worked to set IT accessibility standards, shape government policies, develop human-centric enterprise technology solutions so that all people can reach their highest potential, regardless of age and ability. And now you have your own firm, Francis Westcoat, and I know that you give amazing strategic advice for the public, the private, and the nonprofit sectors. And you make such a difference to this world. And it's such an honor to be here and be able to have a conversation with you. So welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I've been a fan of yourself and your company, and I'm very honored to be on this podcast with you today.
Thank you. So let's start with your own story. What brought you to this area of inclusion and accessibility? Tell us a little bit about yourself and your path.
I guess it's funny that we're talking about inclusion and accessibility. And as I was reflecting, my whole life and journey has been about inclusion and diversity. I was born in Taiwan, but then lived in Hong Kong. And I came to the US when I was 19, and as an exchange student with very little English. And then 3 years later, I married a white male, American. So from that point on, I've been on this journey of trying to not only just kind of grow as a person, but and also to blend in this new culture of the United States. And then later on, I moved around quite a bit. I was in Virginia, and then I was in Kentucky. I was in Michigan, and then I actually moved to Beijing, China, and then back. So all through my personal life and professional life, I've been on this journey of really trying to leverage my own kind of a perspective and knowledge and skills and make a difference both in the personal and the professional world. And then in the early 2000s, I actually had the opportunity, it's really a career opportunity at the time, to go into IBM Research to head up the IBM Accessibility Center, which is really a life-changing post I took. I did not understand the impact of that particular job as head of the IBM Accessibility Center until a few years later. And so this whole personal journey blended very well of this professional journey of being the involved and in charge of the Accessibility Center, which really is an organization that to make sure that technology does not create barrier for people who are either disabled or aging. So it's a perfect kind of a combination of my personal experience and a professional challenge.
And tell me a little bit about what you're doing right now. What do you do at Francis Westcoat?
So, like I mentioned, the role that IBM as a Chief Accessibility Officer has been so transformative. It really gave me extreme both satisfaction and frankly a sense of responsibility, because my whole life has been spent in technology. I've watched and experienced firsthand what impact technology can have. So as I start, kind of working deeper and deeper in this field, and I felt like there's certain narratives and certain message and certain perspective that could be shared to the broader audience in a global sense. And I wanted to really dedicate all my time to doing this because there's a lot of work needs to be done. So that's why I formed the Francis Westcoat to really to do two things. One is changing the narrative and perspective about what digital inclusion is about, And secondly, is really offer up some knowledge and experience and insight I gained in my job, so that I can help organizations to what I call operationalize inclusion.
Yeah.
So that's what Francis Westcott is about.
And tell me a little bit more about what digital inclusion means.
So digital inclusion basically speaks to anything that you use or touch on a daily basis, whether it's at work or whether it's at school or play, or because we know that technology today is pervasive. Everything you do, from your iPhone to your computers, to your temperature sensor at home, everything is technology based. So it's very important as we get into this technology driven world that both for the developer and the designers, people who really make the solutions for the publics, for their employees, for their customer, have a mindset that we do not accidentally or unintentionally create barrier for certain segment of the population. So digital inclusion is all about make information technology barrier free, so we can have parity in both participation and also access.
Right. And I've heard you often speak about authentic inclusion. And that's a term that I love and that is very unique to you. And I was wondering if you can elaborate on it and tell us more about authentic inclusion.
Sure. The authentic inclusion really came out of my both observation and also a little bit of a frustration, because at this day and age, I think the topic inclusion is very top of mind. Right? I mean, especially in the tech industry, given what's going on in the past few years, especially in the Silicon Valley, there's a lot of talk about inclusion. And I think inclusion as a topic certainly deserve all the attention. But authentic inclusion takes a slightly different angle, which is, let's make sure that inclusion is not just a kind of a human topic. It's a human plus technology topic. So authentic inclusion really put the technology on equal part as people. And I call it T&T, technology and talent, right? Because if we accept that technology is here to stay, that's going to impact all of our lives, then we must talk about and think about and frankly invest in technology in addition or in parallel to our investment of diversity and talent, because both has to come together to really deliver the outcome that everybody desires. Just by talking on inclusion or just on the hiring of people with disability or women or GLBT, that in itself, frankly, in my view, is not enough. We also need to make sure that technology side is equally paid attention to.
Yeah, and what you're saying is that it is important to pay attention to it both for the products and services that go to the public, but also for the tools that are used inside organizations, so for their employees. Is that right?
Right. It's inside the employee, but also, it could be tools or could be your website outreaching to your customers.
Yeah.
So whatever infrastructure is a technology infrastructure, you're right on, is talking about the access through your employee or through your customer channel. All those infrastructure has to be made accessible, and the attention has to be paid on this topic, just like what we're paying on security and privacy.
Right.
That's really the kind of a main point of authentic inclusion.
Right. And you've been in this field for a long time. How have you seen technology change in terms of inclusion from like way back when you started at IBM until now? Have you seen an evolution, and what has changed in terms of inclusion and technology?
Yeah, I've been in this industry for a long time, and I can relate that when I first started, back in the late 70s, early 80s. Back then, when you talk about technology or computers, right, it was really about, I would summarize it to call system, technology, system optimization. Back then, it was like, how fast can you process, or do computation, right? And then also the system was designed to be what we call binary, yes and no, right, on and off.
Yeah.
And it's because it's designed to do the input-output processing. And then, of course, with the advent of PCs, then you begin to see what we call the consumerization of technology. That is, the systems moving from the big mainframe that, is in the back office, now beginning to be consumed by average citizen, average, users. And iPhone certainly led that kind of a revolution, even though PC, a personal computer, kind of set the stage for this kind of a movement. So now we're at the stage where, contrasting where the system days, now we're at what I call the human days, right? Because now everybody owns technology, uses technology. So you see the evolution of a technology becoming more and more individualized and personalized. So in this journey, one would think that because it's getting more consumerized or getting humanized, that there's more attention paid to the design and experience of the technology, which to some degree on the consumer technology side, there's certainly a lot more awareness. But I would say in the enterprise setting or institutional setting, meaning in the workplace setting, there is still a lot of attention, a lack of attention in terms of making sure that people with all kinds of different abilities or different perspective can participate and can leverage the technology. And that, by the way, is to me, the future, right? And the opportunity of technology is that how do we actually have, the technology has evolved to the point where we actually can do what I call the kind of a power of one versus, power of many, because we can individualize technology for individual uses.
Yeah, I've heard also say that digital inclusion is when you really give users the highest form of personalization so that they can really use the technology in the best way that is there for them. Exactly,
because everybody now knows, for example, artificial intelligence or machine learning is constantly learning, adapting, and to the knowledge gained, right? So one can imagine, and that should be the ultimate objective, that the technology will begin to really understand and augment the individual person's needs and wants. So when we get to that kind of state, then it's not about making technology available to a person with disability. It's really technology adjusting to the personal preferences. And to me, that is the ultimate potential of technology, is that would take away the kind of a misperception about ability as a disability, but view it as just a personal preferences or personal desire or personal intention.
I like that. I like that term much better, right? And in this process, when you talk to organizations, whether they're governmental or for profit or nonprofit, what do you see are the biggest challenges in making digital inclusion a priority for organizations?
This is actually a great question, right? I've been doing a lot of thinking about that. I think there is a prevailing feeling about, for example, inclusion definitely is an organization culture, right? And therefore, the person that's really responsible for the organization culture really are the senior executive, the senior leaders, because they set the tone for the company. So one argument or one perspective is that, is people at the very top should definitely be helping to set the kind of tenet or the kind of inspiration for the organization to be as diverse or as inclusive as possible. And we certainly see that example being played out. For example, Microsoft, CEO right now is very into this topic. So we can see the very visible kind of a positive impact that Microsoft has on the industry. But on the other hand, I actually begin to think that this is actually a topic that each individual should own it. Because when we talk about inclusion, this is a topic about human. And then when you talk about human, each one of us has a play in that. And I start thinking, if each one of us really believe inclusion is not only necessary, but a must-have, then each individual in whatever capacity or role you're in, whether you are a developer, you're a designer, you're a programmer, or you're a business executive, then you should live by that creed and then really deliver or execute or operate in that mode. So I think inclusion, we have a lot of challenges right now, but as we ask the question of others as to how you can help inclusion, at the same time, I think it's very important that we ask ourselves as to what individually can you help to address this. And this actually relates to my personal experience a bit. I was thinking, when I was 23 years old working in Kentucky, or in Michigan with all white male kind of a customer base, I have to do a few things to really bridge the gap with my customers. And they too have to do a few things to engage me. So it's a two-way street. So I guess it's a long-winded way to answer your question. I think there is there's a tactical kind of perspective, says the organization, the senior leaders. But on the other hand, on a long-term kind of perspective, is that if each individual owns this, then I think the society or the workplace will be better off if we each takes the responsibility.
I love that approach. And are there any technological innovations or anything that you've seen out there that is really exciting that we should know about?
Well, there are lots of technology that's very exciting. I think I would say that it used to be that when we think about accessibility, we talk about assistive technology, right? Mm-hmm. And just by definition, assistive says, it's helping you to do something and it's kind of augmenting. But we're beginning to see, for example, new startup. One of the startup that I'm advisor to is a company called AIRA, AIRA, and mm-hmm. they are a San Diego-based company that has really taken, for example, the wearable technology and using artificial intelligence and to really help person who are blind and low vision to navigate the world. So in this case, they're not just assisting the person, but they're really changing lives by combining these different technology like wearable, artificial intelligence, augmented, technology together. So I think we're beginning to see the possibility of a multiple state-of-the-art technology coming together that really are life-changing. Another technology I think has a lot of potential is virtual reality. One example I saw was that an apps was created so that this individual actually bring the VR, the virtual reality experience to a senior home, to the old ladies who hasn't been home for many years because, you know, she cannot travel. But the person basically went to her house and took a view of the house in the garden and all that. So when the old lady put the VR, you know, goggle on, she has a real, you know, three-dimensional experience of going back to her home.
That's amazing.
And, I mean, to me, that was a great example of using VR to help an elderly person who cannot be there physically, but virtually experience, and the emotional impact was tremendous. So that's an example of how a new technology like virtual reality are impacting, you know, aging in a, not just in a quantitative, but in a qualitative way.
Oh, I love that example. That's fantastic. And last but not least, I know that you're working on a book. Tell us a little bit about the book and what it's about and when it's coming out.
So the book is really a combination of all the things that we kind of just touched upon. It kind of goes through my personal journey and also how my last job as a chief accessibility officer gave me the clarity about how technology is so important to the future of our being. And when I say being, I mean living, you know, working and playing and all that. And so it's my hope that through this book that which will be able to demonstrate that human difference really is the base for driving disruptive innovation, and that organizations will begin to absorb this kind of authentic inclusion more than just an idea, but operationalize it across their organization so we can truly deliver a barrier-free digital promise to everybody. So the book will be coming out at the end of the year. It will be launched at CES.
Right.
So it's a very exciting time, and for me personally and professionally, and you know, I hope that it will give people some ideas as to how this type of inclusion can be made a strategic differences in the business world, and how innovation needs the diversity in, you know, in our in our society, in our workplace.
Well, I can't wait to read it. And tell me, where can people find out more about you and about the book when it comes out? Any special places they can go and find about you?
Yeah, sure. First, they can follow me on Twitter. My handle is FWest34, like number 3 and number 4, FWest34. I'm also on LinkedIn, you know, Francis West. You can find me there. And last but not least, franciswest.co is my website. A new website will be coming out fairly soon. It's not .com, but franciswest.co.
Excellent. Well, that will be available on the website. I will. Thank you so much for being here today. And we are looking forward to seeing your book when it comes out.
Thank you very much, Fanny. This is a great honor to be on your show.
Thank you, Francis. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Inclusive Design Project with Fanny Cravoy. Be on the lookout for our next guest. And don't forget to check out our previous episodes on our website.